Hare Krishna, and welcome to this week's Sunday feast here at ISKCON Chicago. On behalf of Sri Kishore Kishori and Srila Prabhupada, a big welcome to everyone. Thank you so much for joining us. Just a few announcements before we continue on with tonight's presentation. The first is that we have a financial planning workshop for devotees coming up. It's led by His Grace Vamsidhari Gopal Prabhu, and that is in 2 weeks. It will take place on November 7th and 8th. Registration is required. To register, you can either use the link through the temple email if you receive that. Otherwise, if you're not receiving it, you can go on iskonchicago.com for more information as well as to register. Also, there is registration open for Bhakti Shastri courses. Bhakti Shastri is a systematic dive into 4 of the core Vaishnav literatures within ISKCON, Nectar of Instruction, Nectar of Devotion, Sri Upanishad, and Bhagavad Gita as it is. And that starts November 10th. Registration is open now. Please take advantage of these opportunities. These are all online sessions only due to COVID restrictions. Finally, I'll turn it over to tonight's speaker, one of our resident monks, His Grace Acarya-nistha Prabhu. And he's going to be continuing this Brilliant as the Sun series by taking us through Srimad Bhagavatam's 2nd canto, 3rd chapter. And he's titled his class, The Secret Way to Happiness. So I'll turn it over. Thank you so much for agreeing to give this Sunday feast.
Hare Krishna. Thank you so much. It's a great pleasure to be with all of you. Om Jnana-timirandasya Jnananjana Shalakaya Chakshurun Militam Yena Tasmai Shri Gurave Namaha Vanchakalpatarubhyascha Kripa Sindhubhya Eva Cha Patitanan Pavanebhyo Vaishnavebhyo Namo Namaha Jaya Shri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda Shri Advaita Gadadhar Srivasadi Gaura Bhakta Vrinda Hare Krishna 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 Hare 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 Rama 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 Hare Hare. We're continuing a wonderful series here, as brilliant as the sun, and Srimad Bhagavatam is described as that brilliant life-giving, energy-giving substance. And Srimad Bhagavatam is glorified not only in the Bhagavad itself, but throughout all the Vedas, all other Puranas as well, because it awakens us to eternal life. And we've already covered the entire 1st canto. The 2nd canto is actually where Shukadeva Goswami begins speaking. And a personal appreciation of this section is that we get to hear the realizations of the depth and the power and the potency of the speakers, especially here in the 2nd canto. In this chapter, we'll hear from Shonaka Rishi, who is going to be inquiring from Sutta Goswami. And he's really not going to be shy about expressing his own realizations, which for us will help us see things in the right perspective. So we're going to take a look now and begin a quick overview of some of this. So if you can all bear with us. It begins here. Shukadeva Goswami explains that I've answered your questions, Parikshit Maharaj. Parikshit Maharaj was especially asking, what is the duty of someone who's about to die on the threshold of death? And that is that one must always be wrapped in absorption on the personality of Godhead. And because there are a wide variety of transcendentalists in the setting, along with Maharaj Parikshit and along with Sutta Goswami, it's not only bhaktas in the audience, actually. It is a wide variety of individuals having different adhikars and different actual yoga processes. So previously he explained the universal form and the process of meditation on the Lord within the heart. And this chapter is described the change in heart, pure devotional service, the change in heart. So he begins by explaining, we should understand that Shukadeva Goswami, as a Paramahamsa, he is completely aloof. He's so beyond anything of this material world. That a pure devotee, they're so enwrapped in a deeper transcendental ecstatic exchange, a loving exchange of devotion, that even the demigods, Prabhupada says, they seem like insects. What to speak of flickering material happiness of this world? So situated in this very exalted position of detachment, of virakti, he has not even a glimmer of attraction for anything. And he wants to also bring us to that point. So he begins by explaining there are many things you can achieve in this world. In text 2 through 7, he mentions, if you want to be absorbed in Brahman, you should worship Lord Brahma. If you want sex life, you can worship Indra. If you want good progeny, you can worship the progenitors, the Prajapatis. If you want fame, if you want knowledge, beauty, intelligence, there's a whole series of verses here in which the Vedas actually give concession to satisfy material desires. We are all in this material world because we have material desires. And the Vedic procedure is that you can fulfill your material desires in a spiritual way by accepting some authority, namely the devas. So here an opportunity is given that, okay, if you have material desires, here's how you can fulfill them. But it doesn't end there. And as we'll see, there's some powerful statements that are made after this concession. So at the end of this description, he mentions one who desires nothing of material enjoyment should worship the Supreme Personality of Godhead. And this famous verse, if you wanted to pull up text 10, Yashodananda, and I thought we would look at this together. It's a well-known verse. Most of the devotees probably know it. Akama sarva kamo va moksha kama udharadi divrena bhakti yogena yajeta purusham param. A person who has broader intelligence, whether he be full of all material desires, without any material desire or desiring liberation, must by all means worship the Supreme Whole, the personality of Godhead. So this is the direction that Shukadeva is going. Look, we all have some desire, but the linking yoga is when you connect what you're seeking with the source of everything. Janmadasya yataha, the absolute truth is that from which everything emanates. Rather than investing our time, our energy, our endeavors for something which is a subset of the absolute truth, go to the source. The happiness of Krishna consciousness, God consciousness, is so infinitely beyond these paltry attractions of the material world. So whoever you are, maybe you have actually no desires, you're already perfectly situated in Brahman. That's wonderful. Maybe you want liberation. Maybe you don't have any desires at all. Maybe you have full of material desires. Whatever your position, this is what you should do. Yajeta Purusham Padam. Worship the Supreme Whole. Prabhupada translates Padam as the Supreme Whole. Why compromise? Why only get a slice of the cake? So all of the material temptations and flickering things that we put so much, we put on such a high level. These things are actually simply a reflection of the happiness that the soul is seeking in relationship with Krishna, with the absolute truth. So from there, he explains that actually, how is this possible? How can you achieve this? All of these different worshipers can achieve the highest perfection by the association of a pure devotee. And this is an important, very key aspect of the Bhagavatam's teachings, that only by coming in touch with this nirmat saranam satam, a pure devotee who is very connected, linked with the Supreme Personality of Godhead, can that also enter into our heart. And that is what actually we need. We can't get it on our own. In devotional life, it comes by association. So all of these worshipers of different beings, the demigod worshipers, the yogis, they can achieve the highest perfection. What is that? Spontaneous attraction, unflinchingly fixed on the Supreme Personality of Godhead. This is the stage that the Shastra, the Vedas, the Guru, and the Sadhus are trying to bring us to, this spontaneous attraction to the absolute personality of Godhead. For us, Srila Prabhupada has brought us Vrindavan. This is the greatest treasure that Srila Prabhupada has actually given us. This is the gift that the holy name, the Guru, the Shastra is ushering us into. So Bhagavatam is so exalted amongst all the Vedic texts. Why? Well, we have the exposition of Vrindavan, wherein the awe and reverence, the majesty of God is eclipsed by the nectarian, eternal, loving exchanges of pure affection. So from the very beginning of Bhagavatam, we're being directed in that way. And a more mature view of Srimad Bhagavatam is to see all of the other cantos and sections in relation to that. All of the other pastimes. Ultimately, Prahlad Maharaj, Bali Maharaj, Dhruva Maharaj, they're all bringing us to the 10th canto of Krishna's intimate pastimes in Vrindavan, especially in Mathura and Dwarka. So this is the nectar, or the real essence of spiritual life, which captures our heart and captures our mind, allows us to overcome the material energy, the material attractions, because as we know, only by a higher taste, only if we get a superior taste can we give up the inferior taste. And that inferior taste that we have is limiting us terribly in our life. We are bound by material desires which prevent us from actually pursuing our natural position. And these messages spoken here are wake-up calls. They're reminders. Now we're going to move on because it gets better. It keeps getting better. And in text 17, there's a nice text also that many of you may know. If you want to bring it up, Yashodananda number 17. Now, Shaunak Rishi is sharing from his side. He's inquired from Sutta Goswami, and he also has some realizations to share. He says, Ayur harati vai pungsang udyanasthanchayanaso tasyarte yakshano nita utamashloka vartaya. Both by rising and by setting, the sun decreases the duration of life of everyone, except one who utilizes the time by discussing topics of the all-good personality of Godhead. So why should we miss out? Why should we deprive our soul of its inherent ananda nature by not, as it's mentioned here, discussing topics of the all-good personality of Godhead? So the next few verses, we won't pull them up probably, but we want to hear in more detail what is actually being described here. And what is the difference between someone who's relishing that inner satisfaction and others? Shonaguchi continues, do the trees not live? Do the bellows of the blacksmith not breathe? All around us do beasts not eat and discharge semen? So do the animals, do the living beings around us, they're also living. Is that the ultimate goal of life, to maintain our existence? And then he says, men who are like hogs, dogs, camels, and asses. Praise those men who never listen to the transcendental pastimes of Lord Sri Krishna, the deliverer from evils. So this is a particular verse which I think is worth a lot of introspection. We need to ask ourselves the question, by whose standard am I establishing my values about life? By which culture am I assessing my progress in life? Is it from the sadhus, the saints, the great teachers? Or is it from others? Here it's mentioned how much society places on a pedestal people who have no attraction and taste and interest in the absolute truth. It is so deep in our society that we get affected and we start to see the same way. So we need to carefully assess actually who is doing the glorification? What is the quality of these individuals? Rather, to glorify these acts, the pastimes, the leelas of the Supreme Personality of Godhead, Krishna. This is the behavior, the standard set by, we could say, really real souls, real individuals, real human beings, because the human being is meant for this purpose. So our culture, our society is so flipped around that we often tend to align ourselves subtly, unconsciously, with the values of the society, which is being addressed quite strongly here. Men who are like dogs, hogs, camels, and asses. Praise those men who never listen to the transcendental pastimes. It's not my words, it sounds strong, but these are self-realized souls, the way they just naturally, reality is revealed to them. This is the next text. One who's not listened to the messages of the personality of Godhead is to be considered to possess ear holes like holes of snakes and a tongue like the tongue of a frog. Now, why is he being so heavy or so hard, so strong? It doesn't sit well with us sometimes. The fact is that he's drinking. When someone tastes that nectarian eternal ambrosia of the soul, everything pales in comparison, even liberation. Even they're disgusted even with moksha, which is for the mass of people, the ultimate goal of life. Even moksha is considered abominable. What to speak of material sense gratification? So from that platform, because they're relishing such a deep taste in their consciousness, then, someone who's not doing that, the ears are no better than the holes for a snake, or the tongue like the tongue of a frog. That's their realization. And it goes on that if someone has a beautiful turban, silk, maybe gold, unless it's being bowed down to the personality of Godhead, it is simply like a dead body. And the eyes, if our potential for vision, for sight, if that is not also glued to the beautiful form of the Lord, his qualities, his symbols, then there's many creatures in nature that have these false eyes, like moths, so many insects, and even the plume of a peacock feather. They look like eyes, but they're not really eyes. So if we are using this organ for sight to be fixed on so many other things, in your daily life, there's so many things which are vying for our attention. And where is Krishna in that picture? Therefore, you'll see devotees generally, we try to surround ourselves with pictures of Krishna, to give Krishna a chance. Because in Kali Yuga, there's going to be 99 pictures of something else for every one picture, maybe, of Krishna in our life. And if one doesn't receive the dust of that pure devotee, because that pure devotee has that very deep appreciation and revelation. So if we're not in touch with that individual, then our body is practically dead, although breathing. So these are very strong, but we know in the stage of love of God, we also have experience of Radharani. She's also speaking like this. In intense separation from Krishna, she's feeling that life is useless. If one is unable to smell Krishna's fragrance, if one is able to see his form, then what is the real value of that life? So at our stage, it teaches us, what are we missing out on? Why are we so satisfied with the status quo? There's something wrong. There's something wrong with us. There's so much of a deeper experience of life that we're not yet in touch with, but we become complacent. We become satisfied with, wherever we're at. But these messages are like a thunderbolt, a lightning bolt that, wow, where do I fit into these descriptions? And finally, text number 24, I wanted to look at, if you want to pull that up, because this is also a very well-known verse. We'll just read the translation. It says, "Certainly that heart is steel-framed, which, in spite of one's chanting the holy name of the Lord with concentration, does not change when ecstasy takes place, tears fill the eyes, and the hairs stand on end." And Prabhupada pulls up in the purport here this important point, which I'd like to try to weave into our theme, which is the secret of happiness. And we see in this world that this is the perpetual quest of every living being, from the microbe to the insects to the fish, mammals. How can I be happy? Especially human beings. This is their real quest, whether they're in school or college. I was recently on some campuses, and the students are really just trying to play their cards right to get happiness. I'm going to do this educational investment. I'm going to choose this lifestyle or this job. What's the bottom line? I want to be happy. Now, without the deeper knowledge that we have here, unfortunately, they're not going to get to that end point. Prabhupada is going to explain in the purport that the whole process of spiritual culture is aimed at changing the heart of the living being in the matter of his eternal relation with the Supreme Lord as subordinate servant, which is his eternal constitutional position. So with the process of devotional service, the reaction of change in the heart is exhibited by gradual detachment from the sense of material enjoyment, by a false sense of lording it over the world, and an increase in the attitude of rendering loving service to the Lord. Now, the key here and the secret really to happiness is to awaken this detachment. As long as we're pursuing the devotional path, but our interest, and as I tried to express, our standard of appraisal, of worth in this world, as long as that is based on concepts of, we could say, Kali Yuga, what is really the right thing to do? What's best for our kids? What's best for ourselves? What's best for people we know? We need to investigate what is really the fulcrum of that. Where is that coming from? And so these texts are explaining that actually gradual detachment from the sense of material enjoyment is the essential ingredient which allows love of Godhead to really grow. And it might sound uncomfortable, it might, rub us the wrong way, but from the realizations of great souls, we can get a glimpse of how actually the deeper attraction to Krishna, which is possible for all of us have an eternal loving relationship with God, with Krishna. And that taste so infinitely outweighs whatever we're keeping between us and the Lord. So we have to kind of weigh it out. We have to really put them on the scale and see, am I willing to really sacrifice this incredible opportunity and treasure, which is right around the corner? Krishna is literally right around the corner from all of us, but he's testing us. He wants to see, where is our heart? Where is our desire? Krishna, he really wants that full surrender. He explains, Sarva Dharmam Parityagya Mamekam Sharanam Vraja. You have to surrender everything if you want me. And this is the qualification for love of Godhead, that one has to actually be able to give up everything for Krishna. And one who can do that, Krishna says, at that point I reveal myself. But it's not a physical thing. It's not like I have to give up things. I have to give up my attachment to things. Anything that comes in the way. Why should I let anything come in the way? I'm simply cheating myself and cheating others. So this surrender, this full surrender, in our material consciousness, surrender is a very difficult, scary thing. Why should I surrender? Our experience of surrender has always been bitter in this material world. But that surrender to Krishna, it's the most liberating, it's the most actual comforting thing. To put ourselves in a very insignificant, a very helpless condition, that is so much more natural for us than artificially thinking I'm in control. I don't need to surrender. I don't need anything else. That is what keeps us actually miserable and suffering. And that happiness comes from this surrendering, which requires detachment. And therefore to be, as these texts indicated earlier, after all of these opportunities are given, you can get a strong body, you can go to heaven, you can be beautiful, you can get fame, you can be learned, whatever you want. But he says that actually someone with a little deeper intelligence, they're going to worship the supreme source of everything. They're going to transcend, they're going to overcome those limited boons for something which is actually eternal, full of knowledge, full of bliss. Satchidananda Vigraha in perfect form. Even the form of Krishna is described as so exquisite that you can't stop seeing. The eyes, if the eyes blink, it becomes a very traumatic thing. We don't have experience of anything like that in this world. But perhaps we can even imagine the beauty of Krishna, right? There's people in this world that we think are beautiful. Compared to the demigods, they're like, on the lower end, the far bottom of the spectrum. Imagine the most beautiful people in this world. For the demigods, they're like, oh God. They're considered ugly. So amongst the demigods, imagine Krishna's beauty. It stuns the devotees in their tracks. They can't take their vision away. That quality of Krishna's beauty is considered his greatest quality. So this is the drive. This information is the key to propel us deeper in our spiritual life with deeper motivation, deeper enthusiasm, encouragement, desire, and detachment from anything that holds us back. And that is the idea of this chapter, that this change in heart, when will that come? How useless are anything that stands in the way? How unfortunate are, any of the senses which are not engaged in the service of the Lord? They become like logs of wood. And people who are not appreciating Krishna's qualities and pastimes, how unfortunate they are. They're likened to even animals. Why? Because that love is shining through. And therefore, by hearing these things, hopefully we should be praying, we should be begging that when will my heart undergo that change? When will this change of heart happen for me? That when I'm chanting, even something might happen in the body, but when will the heart actually melt? And that is the shift that Prabhupada mentions in the purport in our eternal relationship, that yes, I'm not the supreme controller, I'm not the supreme, I'm not in charge, but I'm the dependent, I'm in the humble service position. And service is also not a obligatory forced thing, you must serve me. No, it's really just love. It's the expression of love. When will that awaken in my heart? And my heart can be freed from the steel frame. This is a very deep question that we can ask ourselves for the rest of our life, which will deeply and rapidly purify us. So I've tried to extrapolate a few of these texts which stood out to me in this chapter and give a brief summary in so doing. And I want to offer my humble gratitude and appreciation to all of you who are maybe listening tonight or even in the future. And I also pray for your blessings that these things can be possible for us in our lifetime. And Prabhupada has encouraged us that yes, in this one lifetime, but we need to wrap our mind around what are my priorities in life? How much am I buying in to the materialistic paradigm, conception of life? Or how much am I aligning myself? How much am I buying in to Srimad Bhagavatam, Shukadeva Goswami, Shonaka Rishi, Where is my faith? And as we become more purified, we align ourselves more and more. We become more and more chaste to Srimad Bhagavatam, chaste to the Mahatmas, the great souls, chaste to Krishna, versus, for so many lifetimes, how chaste we've been to Maya. We've been very chaste to Maya. Now let us change the heart, become attached to Krishna, devotional service. Hare Krishna. Thank you so much. I'm not sure, Yashodananda Prabhu, how long you usually go, if you do questions or...
Sure, Prabhu, and thank you for the class. I'm seeing one question so far from Shruti Priya Mataji, and she writes, Hare Krishna Prabhu, very nice description. Question, what does this nectarian ambrosia taste of the pure level of the soul taste/feel like? Would it be an inspiration to meet and serve God personally?
What was the last part of it?
Would it be in desperation to meet and serve God personally?
Well, I'm not, obviously, I can't explain that taste to you. I don't have that taste. That's a very high stage. But it is described that, yes, it is an intense desire to be with and serve the Lord. So we can't really use language to express these very deep, profound spiritual topics. The language serves to try to bring a concept to us, but the higher levels of spiritual life can only be experienced. There is descriptions that, yes, actually what brings you there is the intense longing, the lobha, the greed. When will I be able to be with Krishna and serve the devotees of Krishna? When will that day come? So there is a deep desire for that, yes, service to Krishna. But beyond that, how can you describe the taste? You have to just hear from those who have it, and hopefully then it will kind of saturation. When a oil saturates something, it bleeds through. So by association with others who have it, hopefully it can kind of spill on us a little bit. I hope that's okay.
I don't see any other questions in the queue. So if you want to speak with a closing statement, or however you want to proceed.
Okay, and usually you go until about 6:15?
Generally 6:30, but if you would like to end sooner, that's okay.
Oh, okay. I thought it was, I thought it was about 6:15. I think we've covered a lot. I'm personally looking forward to this beautiful theme, because Srimad Bhagavatam does, chapter by chapter, progressively bring us to that point. You've already gone through the first canto entirely, and now here, for myself, the second canto is very special because it's a little more unknown to us, but the depth of meaning is very eye-opening. So Shonaka Rishi concludes, O Sutta Goswami, your words are pleasing to our minds. Therefore explain this to us as it was spoken by Shukadeva Goswami, who is very expert in transcendental knowledge, and who spoke to Maharaj Parikshit upon being asked. So all of the philosophy and the pastimes, everything that we're getting is coming by the grace of Shukadeva Goswami. And this explains how everything we need in our spiritual life we can get from devotees. It's never an independent quest, actually. It's never a solo game. It's never about how can I make myself Krishna conscious. This is a misconception. And this is not very pleasing to Krishna also. But here, the sages are, by example, they're showing how are we going to get this experience? How are we going to wake up to that higher consciousness? it's going to come from you. It's going to come here sitting at the lotus feet of a devotee. So this is actually the means through which all of that we were describing is transferred. How are we awakening some detachment from the material world? Because we've heard from someone who has that. How are we getting some small attraction to Krishna? Because we've heard from someone who has that. So transitioning from, or this interplay between Parikshit Maharaj and Shukadeva Goswami and Sutta Goswami and the sages, we see this dynamic. Prabhupada says questions and answers. Now, what are our questions? We are more or less our questions, our inquiry, our inquisitive spirit. So we can, Prabhupada says, we can inquire about the price of rice in the market. We can inquire about, the political situation. We can inquire about the new construction going on in this or that place. These are inquiries, and our inquiries indicate what's really on our mind, what's in our consciousness. But if we can make these positive spiritual, look at the inquiries of the Srimad Bhagavatam. Their real burning desire is not who's going to win the election. Their burning desire is, please tell us about Krishna. Please don't stop pouring this nectar of the name, fame, form, and qualities of the person of God into our ears. Please tell us, how does he create this material world? Please tell us about the different incarnations that he assumes. Please tell us, what is the real benefit for all living beings in all times? And what is the means by which they can achieve it? So really our civilization and our culture is evaluated based on the questions that they ask. You can see also in terms of social culture, youth, younger ages, education, what kind of questions are being asked? High school, college, work life, the questions shift a little, based on the modes of material nature. In middle school, what are the questions? Does so-and-so like so-and-so? Did you see what so-and-so is wearing? So that's guided by the gunas. And a little more polished, a little more elevated is, did you hear about so-and-so politician? Did you see what so-and-so person was wearing? Same spirit is there. But it's very important and actually very natural that we kind of evolve to inquiring the same principle of inquiry, but directed toward transcendence, directed toward the absolute truth. Again, that is the depth, that is the real essence. And those other inquiries, they're so shallow, they're so tasteless, they're like very dry. It doesn't bring satisfaction to the heart of anyone. But these topics and inquiries about Krishna, Lord Rama, his different incarnations, his forms, incredible activities. All of, Prabhupada says since time immemorial, people are captured by these pastimes. But if that material questioning spirit is too strong, then it doesn't mature or evolve to that next level. So yes, I feel, Yashodananda Prabhu, that I've expressed my comments, my thoughts and presentation on this point, this chapter. I hope it has been something of value to the wonderful audience. And perhaps, if no one else has any comment or question, I think we have some matter to contemplate on. And sometimes, concise is also good. I beg anyone's forgiveness if we are ending earlier than usual.
Okay, well, thank you so much, Acarya-nistha Prabhu, for giving us this overview. And I invite everyone to please join us next Sunday as we continue this series. We will be going over second canto, chapter 4. Hare Krishna.
Very well.